Basketball. It's a sport that we've known ever since we were little. Although it may not seem like it, basketball hasn't always been the sport that we know and love today. It's actually one of the younger sports when compared with football and soccer. It all started in January of 1892 when a Canadian physical education teacher at Springfield College decided that he needed to create a new sport. His name was James Naismith. Because of the cold, harsh months of winter, Naismith wanted to make a sport that could be played indoors. He started by placing peach baskets about 10 feet off the ground and threw soccer balls into them. He also created 13 original rules. An example of a couple of Naismith's original rules are: the ball may be thrown in any direction with one or both hands, no shouldering, holding, pushing, tripping, or striking in any way the person of an opponent shall be allowed. The first infringement of this rule by any player shall count as a foul. The second shall disqualify him until the next goal is made. Or if there was an evident intent to injure the person, for the whole game no substitute will be allowed. A goal shall be made when the ball is thrown or batted from the ground into the basket and stays there, providing those defending the goal do not touch or disturb the goal. If the ball rests on the edges and the opponent moves the basket, it shall count as a goal. Because it was a tedious process to climb a ladder and retrieve the balls from the peach baskets, holes were eventually cut in the bottom. This allowed for fast and effective basketball games. The first ever basketball game was played on January 18, 1896. Although the game was only an experimental college game, it's still significant because it marks the first ever basketball game. Things changed when Trenton and Brooklyn YMCA teams faced off at the Trenton YMCA. The outcome of the game was a score of 15-1, with the Trenton YMCA game winning. Because the game was very new at this point, nobody was very good at it. Although the game wasn't anywhere near NBA standards, it was still considered a professional basketball game. As a result, each player was paid $15, with the exception of Fred Cooper, who got paid $16, making him the first highest paid player. In Naismith's original 13 rules, the ball could be batted in any direction with one or both hands, but it could not be dribbled because players could not move with the ball. Beginning in 1910, a player could dribble the ball but could not shoot after dribbling. It was not until 1916, followed by a heated debate, that players were allowed to shoot after dribbling. This change of rules marked the beginning of basketball evolving into the sport that we know and love today. Today, only 2 of the 13 original rules remain in place, with 8 new additions. On February 27, 1940, the first basketball game is televised from Madison Square Garden.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a City College quintet faces 5 fast and fancy web feet from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood. 16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of City College Beavers. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood to cage the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
On June 6, 1946, a group of executives in New York City formed the first new professional basketball league, known as the Basketball Association of America, BAA. This was the league that became known as the NBA. The American Basketball Association, also known as the ABA, was a close competitor with the NBA. In 1976, the 2 leagues agreed to merge together. As a part of the merger agreement, the NBA agreed to accept 4 of the remaining 6 NBA teams: the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, the New York Nets, and the San Antonio Spurs. The remaining 2 ABA teams, the Kentucky Colonels and the Spirits of St. Louis, folded, and their players were entering a disposal draft. It was around this time that some of the greatest players started to arise. Most of them were big men. Players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Moses Malone, and Dominique Williams. In fact, for the next 20 years, big men ruled the league. They scored close to the hoop, often dunking the ball. It wasn't until the late 90s and the early 2000s that point guards started to shine. Players like Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, and Damian Lillard were starting to take the league by storm. They made a lot of three-pointers and mid-range shots. They were also focused around ball handling and making layups around the rim. In the year 2031, scientists found ways to make artificially enhanced players. They were better, stronger, they could jump higher, and they could also run faster. The only problem was that these modifications to their body were causing side effects that could lead to serious disease and even death. It wasn't until 2040 that scientists discovered a way that didn't involve any side effects. They inserted tiger and bear tendons into the arms and legs of players to make them stronger. Because animal lovers and environmentalists were protesting the process, scientists eventually used synthetic robot parts as opposed to animal muscles. Things really changed in 2071 when Kim Jong-un's grandson, Kendall Jong-un, blew up half the planet. Because of the nuclear radiation, the remaining half of the population was forced to move to Mars. Once people got settled in, the NBA became the NBA, Mars Basketball Association. In 2074, players no longer had to wear giant spacesuits because they found ways to create giant air domes. In 2075, the height of the basketball rim was raised from 10 feet to 16 feet because of the lack of gravity. That same year, scientists found a substance called metragonite. Metragonite allowed players to acquire different super abilities. Some had the ability of super strength. Some players with good genetics could even teleport.
Shooting. The second half starts with Durant with a dunk off the...
Other players even had abilities to control elements, such as ice, to freeze players.
Finish him!
Overall, since it was created, the game of basketball has changed so much in a small amount of time. In the early 1900s, when the game was still new, who would have predicted that in less than 200 years, it would have been played on a different planet? It truly shows how unpredictable humans can be and how society progresses. Thank you.